You're listening to Sportly, an Immigrantly media production. There's a man in the stands at Democratic Republic of Congo's matches who never moves. While everyone around him is jumping and screaming and hugging strangers, he stands still with one arm raised toward the sky. His name is Michel Nkuka Mboladinga, but at these matches, he goes by a different name. He's now known as Lumumba Veya, which translates to Lumumba lives. To understand that name, you have to go back to 1960.
And down comes the Belgian flag in Leopoldville, a few days, in fact, in advance of independence.
Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister of the Congo on the day the country gained independence from Belgium. That same day, he gave a speech in front of Belgium's King Baudouin, criticizing decades of colonial rule. It made him a well-known figure across the continent and among civil rights leaders across the world. Malcolm X later called him the greatest black man who ever walked the African continent. But Lumumba did not stay in power long. Within months, he was removed in a coup that is widely believed to have been backed by the CIA and MI6. And within a year, he was captured, tortured, and executed by firing squad. His body was later dug up and dissolved in acid. For decades, the only physical trace left of him was a single tooth, kept by the Belgian police officer who had handled the disposal of his remains. Today, a statue of Lumumba with his arm raised stands at his mausoleum in Kinshasa, which is the closest thing that the country has to a physical monument for him. That statue's pose is what Mboladinga copies at every match. He stands still for the full 90 minutes, and he reportedly practices beforehand, holding the position for close to an hour at a time. He isn't turning himself into a monument. He's standing in for one that already exists, keeping a murdered leader visible in a country that once tried to erase almost every physical trace of him. That's the thing about World Cup fans. We tend to talk about them like background noise or like color commentary for the real action that's happening on the field. But sometimes the fans are the story, and sometimes they're carrying more history in a single gesture than the match itself. Hey everyone, it's Kavitha Davidson, and welcome back to Sportly. This is part 2 of our FIFA series. Before the start of this World Cup, I sat down with Jules Boykoff to talk about who actually profits when FIFA rolls into town, what do host cities really get out of it, and the various pitfalls that this World Cup will and already have fallen into. That episode was mostly about following the money. This episode is about following the fans, the ones who really make the World Cup what it is. And while the host cities will ultimately figure out if the World Cup was actually profitable for them, there's a completely separate story happening in the stands and in the streets. Fans have flown across oceans to be here. They paint their faces and they build entire personas around a team that they'll never play for. Some of what they do is joyful, some of it is strange, some of it sometimes can be genuinely dangerous. But almost all of it tells you something about who we are when we attach our identity to 11 people running on grass. So today we're going to look at fan culture at the 2026 World Cup. We'll talk about what it looks like right now, why it's suddenly everywhere on your phone, and what the history of World Cup fandom can teach us about why any of this matters.
From sunup to sunset, you can't miss them. Scots have taken over Boston, our pubs, and our heart.
No Scotland, no party.
Let's start with what's actually happening right now, because this tournament has already produced an absurd amount of fan content. Boston in particular was taken over. An influx of Scottish supporters showed up for the group stage, and the city started calling itself New Scotland online. There have been kilts everywhere, pub crawls that reportedly drained local bars dry. Yeah, Boston ran out of beer.
Like, everyone in Boston wants all the Scottish fans to stay because they've just brought so much life to the city that we haven't really seen in a minute.
the Scots actually found the viral cop slide and slid down it while wearing kilts and playing their bagpipes, both of which is quite impressive, I have to say. And at one point, Scotland fans took over an ESPN broadcast with a chant so loud that the host just gave up and let it happen. The Boston Chamber of Commerce even put out a statement thanking the fans for the energy that they brought to the city. Scottish fans also brought their own very specific brand of chaos to local landmarks. In an echo of a famous Glasgow tradition where locals routinely crown the Duke of Wellington statue with a traffic cone, Scotland fans in Boston were filmed repeatedly throwing traffic cones onto heads of local monuments and statues. There were traffic cones everywhere. In one particular case, locals watched with a mix of confusion and mild alarm as security tried to intervene, and it was an unexpected clash between European supporter traditions and American municipal order. And then there's just the sheer visual scale of some of the European travel contingents. Dutch fans have turned entire city blocks into moving, synchronized walls of bright orange, chanting and marching in unison toward stadiums like a human tidal wave. Right next to them, Norway fans have been staging mass spectacles of their own. Inspired by their maritime history, hundreds of Norwegian supporters took over Times Square and various subway stations, sitting down in the middle of the pavement, on the steps, on the escalator, performing massive synchronized Viking-style rowing dances that brought traffic and pedestrians and some angry commuters to a complete standstill. Japanese fans, on the other hand, have gone viral for another reason. After Japan scored against the Netherlands, a huge crowd gathered at the Shibuya crossing in Tokyo to celebrate. When the light changed, they cleared the intersection immediately because that's simply what you do at Shibuya, celebration or not. Clips of the moment circulated everywhere and were held up as a lesson in discipline and cultural difference. Inside the stadiums here in the US, Japanese fans have also been staying behind after matches to pick up trash from their own section, something that they've done at previous tournaments too.
Respect for everything, respect for the players, supporters, and also for the stadium. We are kind of honored to be here, so we don't want to make some mess.
It's become such a well-known habit that other fans have started helping them.
Donning his perfectly fit jersey, this duck from Mexico City became an unofficial World Cup star.
Mexico, one of the host countries, has an unofficial mascot this year, and it's a 2-year-old pet duck named Merlin. He belongs to a local street vendor and went viral wearing a tiny green jersey after Mexico beat South Africa 2-0. He became an official host city ambassador and even met the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum. But spontaneous fandom eventually hit a rigid corporate wall. Despite thousands of fans signing petitions, FIFA barred Merlin from entering Azteca Stadium for the Czech Republic match, citing strict animal welfare rules. In Philadelphia, visiting fans have been running into the local folklore around the Rocky statue outside the art museum.
And Philly fans, you will eat this up plenty. You know the so-called Rocky statue curse where fans...
There's a long-standing belief among sports fans that putting a jersey on the statue brings bad luck. Ecuador's fans did not know that before their opener against the Ivory Coast. They draped a yellow jersey on the statue anyway and lost the match 1-0. The jinx was so immediate that the Pennsylvania Tourism Department issued an official warning online stating that Rocky does not need your kit. By the time Brazil's supporter group arrived in the city, they were actively warning each other not to make the same mistake. And there's also a whole genre of culture shock content that has just taken over the summer.
Takis has slushes, coffee, sandwiches, bikinis.
Everything you want.
Everything you want.
European and Japanese visitors have been posting their first encounters with Waffle House at 1 a.m. They've been filming themselves walking through Buc-ee's gas stations that are the size of airport terminals and treating Bass Pro Shops like theme parks. These are all places me as a native New Yorker has never been, by the way. And of course, the Europeans have discovered ranch dressing.
Y'all, the Europeans are trying to smuggle out the ranch out of the country.
There was the whole thing about how Europeans find ranch apparently really delicious, and obviously it's not a thing that you can get in those countries because it's ultra processed and gross. But they loved it so much that they started trying to smuggle back huge bottles of ranch dressing in their carry-ons, to the point where TSA had to issue a reminder that if you're bringing ranch dressing back, please do so in your checked luggage. And there were photos of people who had to abandon their poor ranch dressing bottles at TSA checkpoints because they couldn't bring them in their checked luggage. And then Kraft went so far as to come out with a case of ranch dressing pouches, each of which is TSA compliant, and the whole thing of which does add up to a bottle of ranch. So I'm glad that we've been able to share some of our culture with the Europeans. There was also a German fan with roughly 500,000 followers who's been documenting his road trip through the American South. And at one point he called Taco Bell the Holy Land, while getting genuinely emotional about how green Georgia is. It's pretty funny, and it's also funny to me as a native New Yorker who has never been to literally any of these places. I've never been to a Waffle House or a Buc-ee's or a Bass Pro Shop or a Chick-fil-A or frankly a Taco Bell. But I think that also kind of goes to show you how giant and culturally diverse America is. And it also goes to show you that a World Cup hosted across 3 countries with matches stretching from Seattle to Mexico City to Toronto can turn an entire tournament into a huge trip. And everyone's phone has become a camera crew. All right, so those are obviously the fun examples, and I'm glad that we can all bond over a shared love of condiments. But now we've got to pause and take a moment to look past the surface of these feel-good clips. Why is this specific brand of wholesome fan content completely dominating our feeds right now? The World Cup is a massive financial and geopolitical enterprise. It's a tournament where ticket prices reached historic highs and where fans from the global south faced massive systemic barriers just to get a visa, let alone afford to come here. For every international supporter filming a lighthearted video at a Waffle House, there are thousands of diehard fans who were entirely priced out of this experience. Many people have pointed out that while it's absolutely wonderful to see the Scots and the Norwegians and the Dutch enjoying our 3 countries, poorer fans from other countries couldn't really afford to travel en masse to the World Cup. There are also fans who spent their life savings on match tickets only to be turned away at border control because of the passport that they hold. Recently, Somali referee Omar Abdulkadir Artan, who had been officially selected by FIFA to officiate matches at this World Cup, arrived at the airport in Miami. Despite holding a valid visa, United States border officials denied him entry and forced him to return home.
He says he was questioned at the airport for 11 hours before being put in a holding cell and sent to Turkey.
It was a glaring administrative failure, pretty racist, and obviously embarrassing for the United States. But back in Somalia, Artan was embraced as a national hero upon his return, with thousands gathering to honor his achievements. Canada immediately stepped in to invite him to officiate domestic matches there, turning a diplomatic snub into a point of their national pride. And Artan wasn't the only one to come across this problem in the U.S. Remember Michel Nkuka Mboladinga, the statue fan from DR Congo? He was also denied a timely U.S. visa to follow his team past the group stage. So now you see the true and uneven landscape of global soccer. A video about the stark wealth disparity of international travel and the harsh realities of immigration policy does not go viral. But instead, the platforms amplify a very specific version of global solidarity. When Japan was eliminated from the tournament, a clip blew up showing rival Mexican and Brazilian supporters physically surrounding a weeping Japanese fan, holding him while he processed the grief. It was a genuinely moving image, one of common humanity and empathy. But when you only see moments like this, the World Cup feels like a harmless and universal carnival where sportsmanship can conquer all. This creates kind of a flattened picture of global unity. It shows sports fandom as an open and joyful meritocracy, which it very much is and can be. But in reality, the fans that we're allowed to see are the ones who could afford the tickets, survive the security screening, and pass through customs without a problem. And they're also the fans who, quite frankly, could hire buses to march through streets without alarming locals. The wholesome content certainly is real, and there is something to be said about our global humanity when you remove our borders and our governments who create the wars and the divisions between us. But it might keep us from looking too closely at the fans who were left outside the stadium doors. To really understand what's happening in the stands this summer, it helps to look at how fans have shaped World Cups before this one, both the moments that make you proud of what sports can do, and the ones that show how quickly that same devotion can turn dark. Let's go back to the World Cup in the US 1994. Colombia arrived as a tournament favorite, carrying the immense pressure of a nation under crisis. When defender Andrés Escobar accidentally deflected a ball into his own net against the United States, it cost his team the match and led to their elimination. 10 days after returning home, he was shot and killed outside a bar in Medellin. His murder was a tragic intersection of sports fandom and the unchecked drug trafficking violence gripping Colombia at the time. It's the absolute darkest reminder of what occurs when an obsession with sports curdles into public rage, pointing a whole nation's collective grief and shame at a single human being. We can't afford to treat fandom as purely harmless entertainment when the stakes sometimes get this high. And we don't have to go back 3 decades to see a version of that same instinct. It happened again this summer.
26 campaign ended in disappointment as the national team returned home to a tense reception at Incheon International Airport following their early elimination from the tournament.
South Korea entered this World Cup with real belief that Son Heung-min could finally lead them past the group stage. And then South Korea's coach benched Son for the first half of a match against South Africa, and South Korea lost 1-0 and were eliminated.
From the depths of despair, South Africa qualify for the knockout rounds for the first time in their history.
The backlash from fans was immediate. Head coach Hong Myung-bo resigned within days. South Korea's president publicly blamed the Football Federation and called for a probe. When the team landed back home in Seoul, fans were waiting at the airport at 4 a.m. to boo them, holding banners that read, "Korean football is dead." Son Heung-min posted an apology to the entire country on Instagram, writing that he did not know where to begin and he wanted to win back the trust of South Korean fans. These fans waiting at the airport gate at 4 a.m. to tell their players that they'd failed their country probably would have been the same fans to carry their team through the streets on their shoulders had they won. Anyone who's ever been in a toxic relationship knows that sometimes love and rage stem from the same place. So the same intensity that can lead to death threats and real harm can also lead to extremely generous showings of love and support. Like in the 2018 World Cup, when Iceland's Viking clap showed the world what fandom can look like at its best. It was a slow, synchronized, thunderous ritual that built from a whisper into a stadium-wide roar. Iceland has a population of only 350,000 people, yet roughly 10% of the entire country traveled to Russia just to support their team. The ritual became a global phenomenon that other fan bases quickly copied. And that's fandom at its most generous. So here's where we land. The 2026 World Cup is a massive, continent-sized digital carnival, and it's also a map of our broken geopolitics. We're capable of holding both of these truths in our heads at the same time. We can laugh at the culture shock videos and feel the genuine beauty of rival supporters holding a grieving stranger, and still be clear-eyed about the corporate machinery and border guards controlling the gates. To love this game deeply is to look at it critically. True fandom is not about turning a blind eye to the wealth gap or the arbitrary visa denials just to enjoy a match. It's about understanding that the joy we see on our screens is precious, precisely because it survives inside an industry that routinely treats human beings like line items. The lightness and the weight exist together. They always have. They occupy the same stadiums, the same feeds, and the same afternoons. Our job as sports fans and as journalists is to make sure we do not let the bright, flashing lights of the spectacle blind us to the people standing outside in the dark. Thanks so much for tuning into Sportly. Tune in next week and every week after as we dive into another great story. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast app or come tell us on Instagram. You'll find us at SportlyPod. Sportly is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Paroma Chakravarti, researched by Juan Sebastian Camacho. Our executive producer is Sadia Khan. Our sound designer and editor is Paroma Chakravarti. Our theme music was created by Simon Hutchinson. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune back in next week and every week after for more Sportly.